you can even watch back. Giving players all the props or put them on blast. We don't give no hot takes, only talk facts.
We're giving all our devotion, riding high on this wave of emotion. Going all out, yeah, cause this is our time. No, ain't no stopping us till we reach the finish line. All in, we came here to win. We're gonna give everything. S-I-C-K on the run. S-I-C-K, sick, sick. On fire, we're ready to fight. We'll bring the house down tonight. S-I-C-K on the run. S-I-C-K, sick, sick.
Playing on the car ride, play it when you lounge. X and O, you know that we can hold it down. Shout out to my man Sammy, got it off the ground. And to all the listeners tuned in right now, got debates, analysis, and speculation. This is sports talk for the new generation. You know where to find us, got a reputation. Sick podcast, your #1 sports destination.
We're giving all our devotion, riding high on this wave of emotion. Going all out, yeah, cause this is our time. No, ain't no stopping us till we reach the finish line. All in, we came here to win. We're gonna give everything. S-I-C-K on the run. S-I-C-K, sick, sick. On fire, we're ready to fight. We'll bring the house down tonight. S-I-C-K on the run. S-I-C-K, sick, sick.
S-I-C-K is the sickest podcast. Tune in for the audio, or you can even watch back. Giving players all the props or put them on blast. We don't give no hot takes, only talk back. S-I-C-K,
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 S-I-C-K.
All in, we came here to win. We're gonna give everything. S-I-C-K on the run. S-I-C-K, sick, sick.
S-I-C-K is the sickest podcast. Tune in for the audio, or you can even watch back. Giving players all the props or put them on blast. We don't give no hot takes, only talk facts.
We're giving all our devotion, riding high on this wave of emotion. Going all out, yeah, cause this is our time. No, ain't no stopping us till we reach the finish line. All in, we came here to win. We're gonna give everything. S-I-C-K on the run. S-I-C-K, sick, sick. On fire, we're ready to fight. We'll bring the house down tonight. S-I-C-K on the run. S-I-C-K, sick, sick.
Playing on the car ride, play it when you lounge. X and O, you know that we can hold it down. Shout out to my man Sammy, got it off the ground. And to all the listeners tuned in right now, got debates, analysis, and speculation. This is sports talk for the new generation. You know where to find us, got a reputation. Sick podcast, your #1 sports destination.
Giving all our devotion, riding high on this wave of emotion. Going all out, yeah, cause this is our time. No, ain't no stopping us till we reach the finish line. All in, we came here to win. We're gonna give everything. S-I-C-K on the run. S-I-C-K, sick, sick. On fire, we're ready to fight. We'll bring the house down tonight. S-I-C-K on the run. S-I-C-K, sick, sick.
S-I-C-K is the sickest podcast. Tune in for the audio, or you can even watch back. Giving players all the props or put them on blast. We don't give no hot takes, only talk back. S-I-C-K,
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 S-I-C-K.
S-I-C-K.
Turn up your volume. Because you're about to listen to The Sick Podcast. With Tony Marinaro.
55 seconds left in the penalty, a minute and 27 seconds left in regulation time. Boston 4, Montreal 3. Lafleur coming out rather gingerly on the right side. He gives it into Lemaire, back to LaFleur.
The sickest Montreal Canadiens podcast.
You're in the ball!
Sports entertainment like no other.
Rejoint, on lui fait perdre la rondelle, une passe devant. Et c'est le dégagement, et ce sera la victoire des Canadiens. Stanley pour les Canadiens, leur 23e de l'histoire.
You found the dogs! John, you found the dogs! He found the dogs! And all together, they worked a young team to the top. And now, a 24th Stanley Cup banner will hang from the rafters of the famous Forum in Montreal. The Canadiens win the Stanley Cup!
Brought to you by Energy Transportation Group. Driven to be different. La Vida Tibi. Embrace your true nature. And Playground, your premier gaming destination. It's gonna be sick.
Marinaro, the Sick Podcast on this Thursday, January 9th. Thank you for joining me. We are live tonight. We are absolutely live, and I'll be joined in just a minute by Brian Wilde from Global TV Montreal and Simo, the Snake Boisvert, contributor on BPM Sports and co-host of a podcast en français on prospects called Processus, along with Mathias Brunet, his partner in that venture, of course. We have a lot to talk about, but before we get to the Montreal Canadiens, of course, why don't I start with this? Teams that are in the Canadiens division, teams that are in the Canadiens conference, were in action tonight. It's not over yet, but it almost is, and Carolina beat Toronto. The Buffalo Sabres shut out the Ottawa Senators. Things are not going well for the Ottawa Senators. Good. I'm happy. Tampa Bay beat the Boston Bruins. Things are not going good for the Bruins. Good. I'm happy. The Rangers and the Devils, very unfortunately, both teams picked up points because the Rangers won by a score of 3-2 in overtime. The Philadelphia Flyers lost tonight, and the Pittsburgh Penguins won tonight. So when all is said and done, we're going to get to the NHL standings in just a couple of minutes, and I'll be able to tell you exactly where the Canadiens are. But of course, as everyone knows, the last 3 weeks have been extremely, extremely productive for the Montreal Canadiens. The Sick Podcast is brought to you in part by Energy Transportation Group. Energy Transportation Group, of course, is a leading full-service logistics provider serving all of North America, driven to be different. Also brought to you in part by Bittt Tibi. They launched their new Ultra Lager. It's a refreshing, thirst-quenching beer, perfect for chilly winter days. Only 90 calories, 2 grams of carbs, 4% ABV per can. Available in a pack of 6 and 12 in grocery stores all around the province of Quebec. It's ultra light and ultra refreshing. Also brought to you in part by Playground. Pretty good chance I'm going to be there on Saturday night. We'll see. But Playground is giving away over $100,000 in cash prizes this January at their cash game poker tables. Every Monday through Thursday, go and play anytime from 10 a.m. to 4 p.m. or enjoy the late night games from 9 p.m. to 3 a.m. for a chance to win. Each period will have 12 winners for a total of 22 winners per promo day. Get in on the action at Playground. Without further ado, why don't I bring in the two gentlemen that are going to be with me tonight, Brian Wilde from Global TV Montreal and Simo the Snake Boisvert of Processus. There's Simo.
Hello.
And there's Brian. What's going on, gentlemen? How are you?
Fine. Hi, guys.
Hi, how are you? Listen, Tony, right away when you give those scores, I'm thinking, who do you think the team is, Tony? Who do you think the team is to make the biggest competition for Montreal?
Who do I think the team is to make the biggest competition?
Yeah.
Well, I think Tampa Bay is going to end up taking Boston's spot in the Atlantic. And I think Boston's going to end up going down. I actually think the Bruins are going to miss the playoffs.
Oh, so then 2 spots are available.
I think so. And if the Bruins get in, I think they'll get in the second wildcard spot. But I think the Bruins are trending downward, man. And look, maybe Don Sweeney is going to be able to save them because I think he's going to have to make a move. But in Boston, they're asking themselves, should the Boston Bruins make a move to get better right away? Or should the Boston Bruins actually part ways with some of their better players and start a rebuild? Or should they keep some of their young players and actually start a reset? Those are the 3 questions that are being asked about the Boston Bruins right now. Right, guys?
Yeah. I don't think Boston should try anything to make the playoffs. I mean, if they make it, they make it. But if they don't, I think they should be sellers at the deadline.
Brian?
I think they're just in a bit of a tailspin right now, and they'll recover. I mean, they still are the Boston Bruins. And until they fall apart, I'm not going to predict them to fall apart because we've been waiting a long time for them to fall apart.
Yeah.
They don't have Patrice Bergeron, but they even made it through that last year. So it's going to happen one of these days, but it's like picking the Kansas City Chiefs to not win the Super Bowl. You get caught every time you try it.
Yeah, I think so, but I don't think that Coyle and Zach are able to replicate the seasons they had a year ago, and they haven't thus far this season. And Elias Lindholm came in, and he hasn't produced up to expectations either. Anyway, and they lost, of course, Linus Ullmark, like you just said. But anyway, right now, the Tampa Bay Lightning are holding on to the third spot in the Atlantic. And guess what? Tampa are 6 points behind Florida, who has the second spot. Tampa has 3 games in hand. They win those 3 games, they're tied with Florida. That's unbelievable. And now onto the wild card spot. The Boston Bruins hold on to the first wild card spot. They have 45 points in 44 games. The Columbus Blue Jackets have 1 less point with 2 games in hand on Boston. The Pittsburgh Penguins have 1 less point with 1 game in hand on Boston. The Ottawa Senators and the Montreal Canadiens have 3 points less than Columbus, who have the second wildcard spot, and they both have 2 games in hand on Columbus. So this is going to be an incredible fight. I mean, the Detroit Red Wings are 4 points out of a wild card. They have 2 games in hand. The New York Rangers are 4 points out of a wild card. They have 1 game in hand. Guys, the race is amazing. It's going to be an amazing race. The Canadiens listen, this is what we know. Marty St. Louis said it last year at the end of the season, the last game after Detroit. Next year, our goal is to be in the mix. Jeff Molson said it this year. Jeff Gordon said it this year. Kent Hughes said it this year. Guys, today, Thursday, January 9th, 2025, the Canadiens are in the mix.
And I think it's going to be the Pittsburgh Penguins are going to be that team that on April 7, 8, and 9 that we are looking at as the team that the Canadiens fans are hoping for losses. I think everything's going to be status quo. Tampa's going to be where they're expected. Boston's going to be where they're expected. Right now, it felt, for the last 3 weeks, it was going to be Ottawa, but they're trending down. I think it's going to be Pittsburgh, Montreal for that last spot. Simone, what do you think?
I honestly think the Canadiens are going to be eliminated before April 7th. Yeah.
Do you think they're going to be sellers?
Yeah, but they had a very good streak.
Yeah, it's always you to spoil the party. See, sempre do, voglio.
Look, I'm total disclosure. I want a top 5 pick, okay? But it's not going to happen.
It's not going to happen.
No, it's not going to happen. No. So unless they win the lottery, they're not going to be top 5.
But, okay, so now, I hear you.
They had a good streak. I'm not sure they can keep up with this pace for the next, 25, 30 games. And about the trade deadline, it's like what Kent Hughes said yesterday at the press conference, that basically they have 22 games left before he has to make a decision. But I think come March, I think he's going to be a seller.
So look, I'm going to tell you this.
Really?
Yeah,
wow.
Well, I'm going to tell you this. So there's some people that are listening to us tonight and watching us tonight, and they agree with you, and that's fine. Okay. And I'm going to say right now that if the Montreal Canadiens don't make the playoffs, and if they end up actually going on a series of losses and they end up getting a top 5 pick, I'm not going to cry, because I never cry top 5 picks. Sometimes I cry after the picks are made in the top 5, but I never cry before that, right? Okay? But I'm going to say this. When hockey executives or hockey people or anyone who's got an opinion on hockey has said, in the past, yeah, but you know what? There's only so many picks you can accumulate. They can only all play at the same time. And you know what? You don't want to be a losing organization forever. I used to say, you know what? I'll take the top 5 pick and I'll worry about tomorrow. I'd rather have the top 5 pick than not have it. But the more time goes on, and the more I see what's happening with Ottawa, and the more I see what's happening with Buffalo, and the more I see what's happening with other teams as well, Simon, you have to admit that there are some teams that have been in a 12-year rebuild. It never ends.
Yeah.
And then once they're finished the rebuild, they got to do another one because the players are 12 years older.
Yeah, but that's right. Yeah, they're all ready for retirement.
Yeah, but they don't have Kent Hughes for GM.
Agreed.
I really believe in this guy. As much as I criticize Marc Bergevin, Pierre Gauthier, Bob Gainey before, I really do trust Kent Hughes. I think he had a plan. He's not. He's following it to a T in the last 3 years that he's been named GM. He's not panicking. He has not made. I'm not saying that every move he made was like 100%, fantastic or anything, but he never made a really stupid move. Never did he trade a future asset in order to make the team better in the present. And the only trade that he made that might resemble this is Justin Barron for Alexandre Carlier. But Justin Barron, in my opinion, was not a prospect anymore.
Yeah.
And Carlier is in an age group. He's a defenseman, and I think he could be part of a championship core. So this is not just a 2-year rental to patch up something. It's really a guy who could still be there in, 2030. I personally think that the year for the Habs to basically contend for the Stanley Cup really, really seriously is 2029. I'm not saying they're going to win because you can't predict these things for 4 years in a row, and there could always be a team that's better. But I do think that the Habs are on the way at some point to the Stanley Cup final, and if not, I think they're going to be a contender for probably 7 to 10 years.
Simon, it'll actually be the 3-year
anniversary. Last year that I want to see them at the bottom of the standings.
No, it's not. You're saying that, and then the year after, you're going to come back to us and say they really have to get Gavin McKenna. This guy is really good. And the year after that, you know what you're going to say? The guy's Landon Dupont is the best offensive defenseman I've seen. And he's like, it's never going to end. It's never going to end.
No, I'm sorry.
So Simon, to answer you, by the way, it'll be exactly 3 years that Kent Hughes was hired as GM of the Montreal Canadiens on the 18th of January, because it was on the 18th of January that Kent Hughes was named as the 18th general manager in the history of the Montreal Canadiens. So there's a little something. But Brian, do you have, and I have to say, and I've said this before, I'll say it again, out of all the management teams that the Montreal Canadiens have had since I've been a member of the media, which has been since September of 2002, since January of 2003 on a full-time basis. I have said this before, and I'll say it again. The double-headed monster and the management team of the gentleman that you like to call Hugo, Hughes and Gorton, they're the management team that I have the most amount of confidence in. I don't know if they're going to bring a Stanley Cup to Montreal, but since I have to say whether yes or no, I've said that yes, they will. We'll see. It's going to be hard. There's 32 teams in the National Hockey League. One team wins. But Brian, do you think as highly of Kent Hughes, Jeff Gordon, as Simon Snake Boisvert, as my collaborator Eric Koziel, formerly from Lancé Compte, who said on my show today that he believes that Kent Hughes is ultra intelligent and ultra brilliant, and he has incredible confidence in him? Because I received a phone call from a friend of mine this morning, and unless he sends me a message saying, yeah, I can use his name, I won't. But as I was on my way to work this morning, a buddy of mine called me and he said, I don't believe in this guy. And I said, you don't believe in who? And I said, you don't believe in who? Who are you talking about? He says, Kent Hughes. I said, you don't believe in Kent Hughes? And I said, why? And he said, what has he done? What has he done? So I said, well, he's doing a rebuild. He's staying the course. He's not deviating. He's going to continue. He is the general manager of the team that drafted Demidov 5 and drafted Lane Hutson 62. Gave a very good contract to Cole Caulfield and a very good contract to Caden Goalie. And then he said to me, talk to me about Slafkovsky's contract. I said, well, today Slafkovsky's contract doesn't look good, but in a year or 2 or 3, it might look very good. It might even look great at one point. And then he said the trades. And I said, well, yeah, the Carrier trade is great. He says, yeah. And how about the trading Jake Allen and holding on to Primo? And how about trading Kovacevic for a 3rd-round pick? And how about trading Lehkonen for Barron? And how about giving up a couple of draft picks and Romanov to the Islanders to end up getting Kirby Dach? And how about trading the draft picks for Alex Newhook? Are you sure they're good trades? And I said, okay, you know what? I hear you. So I think he's in the minority, but not everyone is on the Kent Hughes bandwagon. Brian?
Well, the first thing I'll say about trades is the other guy's trying to win that too. You know, like you're not trading with a guy who's trying to lose a trade. You're trading with a guy that's trying to win a trade. So the margin of victory in any trade is not 100-0. And fans seem to be under the impression that you're going to get, you know, Wayne Gretzky for $5. It doesn't work that way. The other guy, Joe Sakic, is really good at his job too. So if you get marginally more than your opposition, then you've done a good job. And sometimes you've met a need, like the Justin Barron trade. I think that Simon brings up is a perfect example. That guy was not a prospect anymore. Kent Hughes evaluated that he was never going to be better than a 5 or 6 defenseman, which grow on trees. And he went and he got a defenseman on the right side that he can use right now. That is a good hockey trade. So you could, I think, just where your friend said, what if on all of them, I think Dak for Romanov is, or 13th pick, however you want to slice it, is a good hockey trade. And if somebody says, what has he done so far? Well, you have to look at an historical perspective there. It's month 36, as you just said, on Jan 18. That makes 36 months in the rebuild. Officially started then when Jeff Molson said, we're tearing it down. We're going to go through a full rebuild on that day that he hired Kent Hughes. No one puts together a complete rebuild in the history of the game in 36 months.
Well, technically, I think it was officially on November 26th when he hired Jeff Gorton. But I'm just
okay. We'll call it 38 months. But a good one goes 5 years. A terrible one in Buffalo goes 14. So, like, you got to have the expectations in line with reality, or you would think that he wasn't doing absolutely everything. You know. Yeah. But reality is, it takes 5 years. If you do it absolutely perfectly, they'll make the playoffs in 2027. That they're even in the mix right now shows really how well it's going. That they're bringing in the best player, not in the National Hockey League today, into the lineup next year in Demidov shows, again, how well it's going. Alex Newhook will then become a third-line hockey player. Fantastic. That's a good rebuild.
Yeah, Brian, and you know what? It all depends on how you look at trades too, because I said, you know, my buddy said to me, the Lehkonen for Barron trade wasn't a good trade. No, it wasn't for the Canadiens, but a couple of years later, the Lehkonen for Barron trade actually became Lehkonen for Carrier because Barron got you Carrier. So you can look at it that way too, right?
Yeah, and also, well, in a rebuild, what you have to understand with what your friend has to understand with what Hughes did is that he figured that Lehkonen was not going to be in his prime when the Habs are contending. So he took a shot at a former first-round pick who could have turned out, to be a good player, but he's not really. But Lehkonen, to me, won't be in his prime in 2028, 2029, 2030. And that's why when a GM walks into a rebuild situation, that's always what he figures out. Will this guy be part of my core in 5-6 years? If the answer is no, you trade the guy and you get younger assets.
Hey, Nick, let me ask you.
We have to mention here, if we're talking about the rebuild and how Kent Hughes has done well or not well, this conversation can't end without us mentioning the name Sean Monahan, who we got 2 first-round draft trips for. Nobody in the history of general managing has done that. In the history, got a guy, let him go, got a first, got him again, let him go, got a first again. No one has done that.
Mind you, and I agree with you. Mind you, I know some people who are complaining that they traded Sean Monahan because they wish Sean Monahan was the Montreal Canadiens second-line centerman this year.
Yeah.
And you know what I said to those people? I said, if they don't trade Monahan, you probably end up making the deal for Michael Hage. Because the draft pick that you got for Monahan,
that's right,
and the deal you ended up using to move up with the Los Angeles Kings to make that deal for Michael Hage. Snake, you that specializes in prospects, and once again, you have a podcast en français with Mathias Brunet. It's called Processus. It's a podcast that does really, really well in the ratings, by the way. It's behind mine, mind you. But
Tony. It's behind mine, by the way.
It's classic. It is this week, but let me tell you, for many, 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 many weeks, it was ahead of mine, and I was calling in yellow, and I said, we're getting beat by a snake. We're getting beat by a snake. Okay, I'll kidding
Well,
aside.
mine is once a week, Tony. You do it every night, so I think we're comparing apples and oranges.
Yeah.
And also, we have the French market here.
Yeah.
In a way, the English market
little
is
larger.
larger in Quebec, but it's also bigger if you look at the whole North America continent.
Yeah. Thank God I do the podcast every night. It's the only thing that I do every night in this house. All right, okay, but that's another story for another day. I digress. Okay, let's move on. Hey, listen, you that specializes in prospects, did Chicago blow it, and did Columbus blow it with Levshunov and Caden Lidstrom? And I know that there's still probably a good 10 years before we could actually evaluate that and say with certainty. But today, can you tell me that Chicago and Columbus blew it?
Okay, I if you're talking about the 2024 draft, I think they both blew it because I like Levshunov, but I would have never taken him second overall. Lidstrom, injuries, question marks about certain aspects of his game. I was flabbergasted when Columbus took him at number 4. And remember, if Demidov goes to Columbus, we might not be talking about the Habs rebuild the same way we are now.
That's right.
Who knows what they would have taken?
Great point.
Who knows what they would have? So there's an element. I wouldn't call it luck, but I mean circumstances play a part in this. But when you control your own destiny, like the Hawks did, because they did after Celebrini, they controlled the draft, and they take Levshunov, who's fine, but you pass on Demidov. And especially when you basically only have Connor Bedard up front. So, okay, Chicago might stay in the basement, and basically they might get McKenna next year, and we might argue that, well, had they taken Demidov, they would not have finished last next year if they do. Look, this is all something I think to be assessed in about 5 years. We're going to see the Hawks, the Jackets, the Ducks, the Sharks, and the Canadiens, who were 5 rebuilding teams for like a few years now. In 5-6 years, we'll see who made it. We'll see who didn't. There will be teams who don't make it, like you were mentioning, Ottawa, Buffalo. I mean, they've been rebuilding forever. But for now, I think that, Chicago and Columbus blew it.
Okay. Now, we're a good 25 plus minutes into the podcast. One of my favorite topics. Are you ready? Let's bring up a couple of stats. Let's bring up some data on Lane Hutson. Watch this. Lane Hutson is the only rookie defenseman, says Canadiens_Muse on application X, with 7+ points this season. He has 30. Nathan Gravite says Lane Hutson, since getting paired with Mike Matheson on December 5th, 3 even-strength goals, tied for 4th in the Canadiens. 11 assists, 2nd on Montreal. 14 points, 3rd on Montreal. 22 minutes and 1 second total time on ice per game, 2nd on Montreal. 4.02 goals for per 60, 1st on Montreal. At Habs on Reddit, since some people still care so much about plus-minus and keep on talking about Lane Hutson's -7 overall, he's been on the ice for 8 empty net goals against. Remove that. Lane Hutson is +1 at even strength this season while playing 22.38 minutes per game. Canadiens_Muse again. Lane Hutson ranks among defensemen this season. 7th in assists, 8 in points, 6 power play assists, 7 in power play points. He's a 20-year-old rookie defenseman. And the other day, we brought up as well that in the history of the Montreal Canadiens, and guys, I think we can all agree that history of the Montreal Canadiens has seen some pretty good defensemen play for it. Lane Hutson reached the 30-point mark faster than any defenseman in the history of the Montreal Canadiens. And that 2022 draft year, let's bring this up, that the Canadiens drafted Slafkovsky 1st overall, and they got Hutson 62nd. Of that draft year, the most points per game,
Look at
Lane
that.
Hutson has .76. Nobody has 75, 74, 73, 72, 71, 70, 69, 68, 67, 66, or 65. Logan Cooley is next at .64. I think Slafkovsky is 3rd, by the way, at .52 or .53 for those who are wondering. Simon Snake Boisvert I don't know when it was, whether it was 3 weeks ago or 4 weeks ago, you called Lane Hutson nothing more than a gadget player. What a gadget player would be in the NFL, which is nothing more than a specialist. So now, for the first time ever in the history of a sports podcast and a Montreal sportscaster,
I don't even know what's coming.
you
but something's
repeat it,
coming.
I'm going to puncture my artery. Say it again. Say it again.
What do you want me to say?
Tell
It's
me
a gadget
again.
player.
Tell me
He's a
again
gadget
that Lane
player.
Hutson is a gadget player, and people are going to witness a guy bleeding in his
First of all,
basement. And by the way, I'm scared of scissors. I'm scared of cuts. I'm scared of blood. Please don't say it again. But at the same time, I dare you. Say it again.
Tony, first of all, I just want to say something. Calling a player a gadget player is not as negative as you guys make it out to be. Okay, first of all. Second of all, the doubts that I had regarding Hutson were legitimate because, after all, he was chosen 62nd overall, although he was showing all these offensive although he was showing all these offensive skills and everything. And at some point, you kind of wonder, you look at the history. When I evaluate players, I often look. I've been watching this for over 50 years. I always look at comparables, and I'm like, okay, what are the probabilities that a 5'8", 5'9" defenseman who's very lightweight makes it in the NHL and play as well as he does? But there is one thing that this week I went back to watching games from 2021, 2022, when he was in his draft year.
Okay.
And I said, what did I miss? And there is one thing that I missed. What he does now, he was doing it. Okay, we all agree it was incredible. But there is one element that I should have taken into consideration. He was extremely tenacious, the way he is right now in the NHL. And sometimes you're a small player, but you're afraid. You get rid of the puck quickly. This guy did not get rid of the puck, although he had like 2, 3, 4 players around him. And I underestimated that when I was watching him in 21, 22. And that's why I had this opinion. And look, the guy beat the odds, and it's great. I think he's the most spectacular player that the Habs have had in many, many, many years. Yes, he does make mistakes. Yes, he there's turnovers. He's not always like at the right spot in the defensive zone. But look, if the guy makes 40 great plays during a game, and he causes he's a liability for maybe like 20 plays, well, that's plus 20. And I like Quinn Hughes a lot. Many, many years ago, and every time I heard the comment that he was a bad defensive player, I got angry. And with Hutson,
well, that's the same way I felt when you called him a gadget player.
Exactly.
I didn't know whether to cry or stick a fork in my eye.
Well, like I say, it wasn't as negative as you think it was. But what I'm saying is that I went against my principles because I like Quinn Hughes, and Quinn Hughes
takes a big man to say that, by the way. Good for you. You're basically saying you didn't evaluate him the way you should have. And that takes a big man to say that. Good for you.
Yeah, and it doesn't follow my usual evaluation process. Let's go back 40 years, okay? We might have older listeners here. Paul Coffey, one of the greatest offensive defensemen of all time.
Yes.
There's 2 years that he scored over 100 points.
Yeah.
And Rod Langway, a defensive defenseman, was given the Norris Trophy. You might remember that.
Yes.
I remember I was in CJEP at the time, and I argued with guys. Come on, Paul Coffey is the best defenseman ever, aside maybe from Bobby Orr.
Yeah.
And guys were telling me, no, he's not good defensively. And I would go nuts. I see Lane Hutson, And then I say, oh, he won't be good defensively. He's too small and everything.
Yeah.
So I go against everything I believe in. And man, I don't know why.
So, Brian,
is that a good explanation?
Yeah, it is. And by the way, a lot of people said that about Paul Coffey, that he was just a one-dimensional kind of defenseman. He was just offensive and he wasn't defensive, which, you know what, ironically, he made one of the greatest defensive plays in the history of Canadian hockey by breaking up Canada Cup, by breaking up a 2-on-1 by the Russians and then going back the other way and taking a wrist shot from the blue line, which ultimately was deflected by Mike Bossy for the game-winning goal. By the way, Paul Coffey was drafted 6th overall in the 1980 draft, and that was an amazing draft for the Edmonton Oilers. Really amazing. I'm trying to think. I don't remember if they grabbed Messier in that draft or they grabbed Curry. But if memory serves me, they grabbed Curry. Yeah,
that was Curry, and I think they also drafted Anderson too, and I think they got Andy Moog that year too.
Yes, they did.
Yeah.
But Tony, I just have a question. Okay,
Yari Curry went 69th, by the way. Yeah, go ahead, Snake.
I'm not looking for excuses because honestly, when a player is chosen 62nd and he performs as well as Hutson does, I don't use that excuse. Oh well, he was drafted 62nd. No, because in my opinion, I'm supposed to see the guys who are drafted 62nd who can make it. You understand?
Yes.
Just like, for instance, I had Victor Arvidsson as a top 10 pick in 2013. He was not even drafted. He got drafted in 2014 in the 4th round. Another small player. He wasn't that fast. People were telling me, what are you thinking? I said, look at the guy's moves. Like Hutson, you know?
Yeah.
So in that sense, I have to be consistent, you know? So my question would be, just out of curiosity.
Yes, go ahead, because then I have 2 questions for Brian. Yes.
Can you talk to scouts and ask them why he was chosen 62nd?
Because he was small.
Obviously.
Because he was small. That's it.
Quinn Hughes was small.
It's the same reason why Marty St. Louis wasn't drafted at all, because he was small and people didn't believe.
Yeah, but Quinn Hughes was small. He was drafted 7 overall.
Well, he's not small like Lane Hutson.
No.
Quinn Hughes is not small.
You know, like, okay, so, you know, Brian, I got a question or two for you. You have done quite a bit of scouting in your day, and I know that you love evaluating prospects. It's something that you've done for a living. My question for you is, A, do you understand Snake saying...
Absolutely.
It's on me.
Absolutely.
I got away from my principles.
Well, sure, but I also understand that he said that he went 62nd in the entire hockey community. I mean, he was passed over like 3 times by the team that took him. So, I mean, you can't say they were geniuses. They passed them over 3 times. Yeah, and the other teams passed them over to the 62nd pick, too. It can be a crapshoot. I totally understand why he went 62nd.
So here's a good one. Here's a good one.
By everyone.
Now that we know what we know, okay? Yeah. We don't have to look into a crystal ball anymore to find out what kind of player Cooley is, what kind of player Slafkovsky is, or what kind of player Lane Hutson is. We know they can still develop to be obviously something else. They're still very, very early on in their careers. I mean, let's be honest, Lane Hutson's in his rookie season. But now that we know what we know, so we have this data, we've watched them, we know. The 2022 NHL draft is tonight. The Canadiens have
did they take him first?
The Canadiens have the first pick overall, Brian. Who do they choose?
Well, they would take the best player available, and he's Lane Hutson.
That's
the best player. Well, I mean, if you have the sample that you now have, he is the best player out of that draft at this moment. And I would say Logan Cooley is the second best player out of this draft at this moment. So yeah, yes. you would take him. But you know, and another thing to talk about the relativity of everything that he was taken 62nd. Well, his brother is like a carbon copy of him, and he didn't make the first round either. So even though Lane was doing everything Lane was doing, and you know, just showing off in Boston what his hockey skill set was, Cole still went what, 36th,
43rd.
43rd. So it's crazy. I mean, size still mattered to the extent that you had like his doppelganger 2 years later, and he still went 43rd. They love size in the draft. It's as simple as that. Size matters in the draft more than any other thing. If you had 2 players doing the exact same thing, Zach Benson would go wherever Zach Benson went because of his size, and the other guy that did the exact same thing Zach does would go first or second.
He's
Look,
right.
I had Cole Hutson 14th last year, by the way.
Good for you, because that's a excellent work by you. 14 is probably where he should be.
I think his brother's amazing. A shout out, of course, to Fruiterie.
And Cole's going to be amazing too. They're both going to be amazing.
Yeah. By the way, Cole Hutson drafted by the Washington Capitals, who also drafted Ryan Leonard. You take a look at the Capitals prospects, by the way. They've done a reset on the fly, and their drafting is really, really good. You know what else is really good, guys? Fruiterie Dillard. It's a family-run business in LaSalle. It's a mainstay in the LaSalle community since 1995. They're proud to continue offering some of the fresh foods and flavors that they have for the past 30 years, from fresh fruits and produce delivered daily to an ever-expanding assortment of deli meats and cheeses and sandwiches. You'll find personalized service and friendly faces that make you feel like family. I go there pretty much every Saturday morning at around 10:30 in the morning, and I get my cold cuts and I get my fresh fruits and my produce and all that stuff. I'm telling you, I'm there every Saturday morning. So if you want to bump into me somewhere in LaSalle and talk sports, you can do so at Fruiterie Dillard on Saturday mornings. And if you want to bump into me somewhere on Saturday nights, chances are I'm at Playground. All right, so now you know where I go. Okay, perfect. Let's get that out of the way. Nick Suzuki, poor Snake. Tonight he's going to feel like this is a sabotage, because with Snake, we've had plenty of great conversations. He's my collaborator on Wednesday mornings on my radio show on BPM Sport called Le Forum. For those who are wondering, by the way, bpmsports.ca, check out the website, 91.9 on your FM dial if you're in Montreal, and subscribe to their YouTube channel, and you can watch me and you can listen to me, and Snake is there every Wednesday morning. Brian, Snake has said, and it's hard to argue with this, that if the day comes that Nick Suzuki and Cole Caulfield are on a second line for the Montreal Canadiens, then they are legitimate Stanley Cup contenders at that point. So it's hard to argue with that. I think that is pretty much like it's a fait accompli. It's a fact. I maintain that if the Canadiens build a deep team, they could win the Stanley Cup with Cole Caulfield and Nick Suzuki on the first line. Because I believe that Nick Suzuki is a first-line centerman, and I believe that Cole Caulfield is a 40-goal scorer. This year, and even last year, there were a lot of statistics that I think supported my opinion. Nick Suzuki last year was top 15 among centermen in goals. He was top 15 among centermen in points. He was top 15 in the National Hockey League among forwards with possession in the offensive zone. Cole Caulfield has turned out to be a much more complete hockey player who had a career-high 28 goals last year. He's on pace for over 40 this year. Brian, where do you stand?
Well, a couple points I'd like to make. One starts with Eichel, Barkov, Point, McKinnon just beaten to get 1 5-on-5 goal in 4 hockey games that Nick Suzuki is putting in most of the minutes against those 4 games on the road trip. That has to be point number 1, because Nick can play the best hockey players in the world and succeed. The other is that historically, a number 1 line in the NHL that wins a Stanley Cup has 100 goals. The number 2 line has 70 goals. So has Nick, Cole, and whoever the third guy, can they get 100 goals? In the second half of last season, they got 53. But Slafkowski has fallen off considerably, so they are not on that pace anymore. Cole himself is on a 45-goal pace, and Nick himself is on an 86-point pace. So those two are doing great, but they wouldn't be a 100-goal line at the end of the day. And that's what it takes. And the second line is a 70-goal line. And the third lines are 40 and 40, and the rest is your defense. That is how you get to that total that produces a Stanley Cup. So can Nick do that? Yeah, Nick can do that. Can Cole do that? Yeah, Cole can do that. And the jury's still out on whether Uri can do that. But I think the way they play one-on-one against some of the best centers in the NHL, they're not running a deficit. Just like Philip Deneau didn't run a deficit, even though he only got 50 points.
Snake, I know that you can take stats and you can have them say whatever you want, right? Because I could take stats that'll support my case and you could take stats that'll support yours. Like I'll tell you that Ryan O'Reilly had 77 points in the year in which this team won the Stanley Cup. And I could tell you that I think David Krejci had like, I don't know, 60, mid-60s, and they won the Cup. And you know, you can come back and tell me that Sidney Crosby had a lot more when they won the Cup, and maybe Braden Point did as well, and maybe Barkov did as well. And so I get all of that, but a lot of people for a long time have said, even though Nick Suzuki is still so young, well, Suzuki's not a point per game player. And last year he fell just a little shy, of course, with 77 points. He plays all the time. He plays over 20 minutes a game. He gets some of those big matchups like Brian talked about. He's about 50% in the circle and has been for his career. He was about a 95 to 100-point player in junior hockey. He was clutch in every single season that he played in. He was productive in every single season that he played in. He was clutch and productive in the playoffs, Memorial Cup. He won the MVP. I think he had 42 points and whatever. And every year that he's been in the National Hockey League, he keeps on getting better and better and better as far as offensive production is concerned. Let me show you these numbers, Snake. So for those who say, I know Nick Suzuki is not a number one center, he doesn't get a point per game. Well, he's on pace. He went from 0.58 in his first season per game to 0.73 the next year, to 0.74 the year after that, to 0.80 the year after that, to 0.94 the year after that. And he's at 1.02 points per game this season. If that isn't convincing to anyone watching of his ability to A, get better, and B, produce points, and C, show that he will definitely be a point per game player. I mean, if that's the argument, you're going to have to throw it out the window. Like, there's got to be another argument. So with all that said, Snake, and the graphic I just showed you, I'd love to hear your opinion.
Okay, well, there's a few points I want to make. First of all, notwithstanding the stats and everything, because sometimes stats can be a little bit circumstantial, it's the eye test to me. To me, a number one centerman is a guy who practically controls the game night after night after night after night. And I'll give you one thing. I'll give you a point of comparison. Robert Thomas from the Blues.
Love him.
I love Robert Thomas.
Me too.
I have a poster of this guy in my living room.
Well, I have one of Samantha Fox, but to each his own. Go ahead.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Anyway, you understand. I don't even consider Robert Thomas a number one center because, in my opinion, there's about 10 of them in the NHL.
Okay. I was just going to ask.
That's the point. So, second point I want to make. I don't understand the aggressiveness of so many fans when I mentioned that it would be good for the Habs to have Suzuki as their fourth best forward, let's say. Okay, 3 guys better than him. Right now, he's the best, but I would rather have 3 guys better than him for the Habs to be a contender. Why the aggressiveness? What's wrong with saying that I want to see Suzuki as the fourth best forward? Because if he is, the Canadiens win the cup. Why the idea that we have to have Suzuki as a number one and no one else? Can any of you guys explain this to me? I mean, it's the Stockholm syndrome or what? I don't understand.
I can explain it. They're just saying then that they feel as fans that the components aren't on the team yet, and then they'd be frustrated that the component would be hard to find, and therefore they think that the rebuild is not going as well as they had hoped, and then they're unhappy that the roster isn't set in stone and wonderful like they believed it was. You're hurting their feelings.
I think you make a lot of sense. Thank you.
Yeah.
Yeah, but because I think, though, like, everyone would agree that if Suzuki is the fourth best forward of the Montreal Canadiens, chances are they're going to be in the Stanley Cup final. I get that, but I just think you're not realizing how good he is.
Yeah, but he was just marking it on does he control the game and
but I understand.
Put words in your mouth,
that's fine.
Simon. You're saying he doesn't control the game.
Okay, right? So let's do this. Okay, I think Braden Point's a fantastic hockey player. Do you agree?
Yeah,
sure. And Suzuki just beat him.
Okay, okay, but yeah, one guy, I get it. But I think he's a fantastic hockey player. Snake, you agree, right?
Yeah.
Okay, perfect. He's a number one centerman, Braden Point, right? Well, just say yes, he is. Come on.
Yeah,
was it okay,
yeah.
Perfect. Okay.
Not a top 5, but probably at the tail end of my 10-12 centerman that I see as number 1.
But he's got to be good enough. He was a centerman that powered their way to the Stanley Cup a number of times.
Yeah, but
so you got to put him in the category of good enough, right?
Is Kucherov. Yeah, their best player is Kucherov, but yeah.
Okay. So that's what I'm saying now, okay? Yeah. So now I need you to think about this for a second, okay?
Yeah.
Take Braden Point out of Tampa. Put him in the Canadiens with Caulfield and Slavkovsky.
Yeah.
And put Nick Suzuki with Kucherov and Gensel. You're going to come back. You're going to tell me Nick Suzuki is not a number one centerman. You know how many points he's going to pick up? 8,000. You understand what I'm telling you? If Nick Suzuki plays on a line with Kucherov and Gensel,
Every pass he makes goes in the net.
and with Hedman on defense, on a very good team, and with John Cooper as his coach, he's going to pick up 100 points every year. They're going to say he's a number one centerman.
So basically what you're saying is that if Suzuki plays with Demidov, obviously his point total goes up, and then I'll have to say, oh, yes, he had 98 points. He is a number one centerman.
I'll say this, and look, I don't know, but I
But
believe.
what if you put someone else?
But I believe.
I think in order to compare players, they have to be put in similar circumstances, which is basically impossible because Braden Point is not going to play for Montreal and Suzuki is not going to play for Tampa. So we'll never know.
I understand that, but I believe that I believe that Demidov is a better talent than Slavkovsky, and I believe that Demidov will be a better offensive player than Slavkovsky. And I believe that if Suzuki plays with Demidov and Caulfield next year, you ready? He's going to hit 95 points. I believe that. Could be wrong.
It's not impossible.
But what if he does? Then are you going to tell me, okay, he's a number one centerman? Yeah.
Here's the only thing that makes me think that a guy is not a number one centerman, and it's to Simon's point for the most part. If I see a guy that everybody says is a number one centerman, and you watch game after game after game, and he's getting caved in, and most of the game is in his own zone, and he can't transition the puck to the other end, and the hockey isn't actually played in the offensive end, and he's supposed to be a number one centerman, he's obviously not a number one centerman. And frankly, in October, Suzuki and everybody was getting absolutely caved in. They were all, if you want to bring in analytics into it, they were all getting 35 shot share, and it was really bad looking. But since then, something has clicked, and the line does look like a number one line, and he does look like a number one centerman. And the point production reflects it as well, and the wins are reflecting it as well. So I don't think one can say a whole season of number one center has been put in this year, but it sure is trending the right way.
Well,
But
and
the second half last year
Was good too. 53 goals that line got.
So at some point, but if you look at the other top centermen in the league, they don't have these ups and downs that Suzuki has, I think.
Yeah, but they're going through a rebuild. Something has to be given as a margin of error and a margin of understanding, really, because, you're just throwing in these defensemen with a lot of inexperience, and then you've got overall a team suffering a lot of losses. So, nobody's going to look that amazing when you're drafting fifth. It's just the way it is.
Yeah, no, I understand. It's just that I want to see Suzuki take control of the game. And in his entire career, I have not seen it. The way I see it.
You didn't think you saw it on the road trip?
I'm talking his entire career, not a game here and there.
Okay.
That's my point.
Okay.
But I just showed. But hold on a second. I just showed you his entire career. He keeps on getting better and better point production per
In
game.
terms of point production, yeah, because he has better teammates and everything. And obviously he's about to reach his prime, or he's in his prime right now.
Okay, so I got something for you. I got something for you.
Yeah.
I got something for
Oh,
you.
no, not the scissors again.
No.
I'm just watching a show that's already tough enough.
Yeah. So I got something for you. You're saying what you're saying because you're not blown away by him.
Yeah, exactly.
Here's the thing. He doesn't do anything ultra spectacular, but he's very good at everything. Right? He's got a very good wrist shot. He doesn't have a great wrist shot. He's got a very good one-timer. He doesn't have a great one-timer. He's a very good skater. He's not a great skater. He's got a very good hockey mind. He's got very good hockey intelligence. He's got very good hockey IQ. He's got a very good hockey durability. He's got very good hockey playmaking skills. He's very good, right? You understand what I'm getting at? He does everything. So Snake, you can get guys like, you may have thought that Brett Hull was a phenom, and rightfully so, because he had one of the most lethal slap shots ever, right? But his defensive game wasn't very good, and we can find other parts of his game that weren't, but he had that X factor.
Yeah.
So the X factor is, okay, this guy's a phenom, right? Like Cole Caulfield is an elite goal scorer in the National Hockey League, right? There's not, I don't know, there's not 40 or 50 players in the National Hockey League that can do what he does and shoot the puck the way he does.
Mm-hmm.
But Nick Suzuki is in like maybe not elite, but he's in the upper echelon of about 7, 8, or 9 different categories. To me, you add that all up, when you get 9 on 10 on chapter 1 of a test, and you get 9 on 10 on 2, and 9 on 10 on 3, and 9 on 10 on 4, and 9 on 10 on 5, and in your 10 chapters, you get 9 on 10. When you finish with a 90 or a 91 or whatever it is, you're elite. You don't have to get 99. You don't have to get 100. You don't have to get 98. But 90 on 100 that's not elite for you? You understand what I'm getting at?
Okay, so if he's elite, why aren't the Habs better?
Because it takes a team. If
it takes a team, but if you have an elite number 1 center, usually he's going to make a lot of guys around him better.
Okay.
You think Robert Thomas is elite?
Nope.
Okay, so name your elite centers.
Who's the best player?
I don't have the list in front of me.
Who's the best player
but just off the top here, Barkov, elite center?
Top of my head, McKinnon, Draisaitl, McDavid.
Let's stop at McDavid. McDavid's the best player in the National Hockey League, right?
Yeah.
Okay. He has been for how many years?
The best player? Oh, 7, 8 years.
So why did he only make it to the final once, and why did he never win a cup? You understand? Because it's a team game. You get it? I'm not blaming it. Team game.
Yeah.
But you know what? I still have people telling me, McDavid's not that good in Game 6 and Game 7 when they needed him most.
One of the reasons why I wanted another top 5 pick this year is for the Habs to draft a James Higgins, a Michael Misa, whatever.
It'll never end.
This guy becomes the number 1 center of the Habs, so you guys can put this Suzuki number 1 center to rest forever.
You're convinced that Misa's going to? So you're convinced that Misa will become a better centerman than Suzuki? Convinced? If you tell me you're convinced, you'll bet the house. You see, bet the house. If you'll tell me you'll bet the house, maybe I can understand. Will you bet Are you going to bet the house?
I'm not going to bet the house.
Oh, you're not. Well, then what?
No. However, I do think that it's too bad the Habs don't get the chance to draft a guy who could be better than Suzuki, because I don't know. I don't understand so much aggressiveness when I talk about Suzuki as not an elite centerman, and I would prefer he be the second line center. What is wrong with what I'm saying?
I would like to run a little counterpoint on that. And I'll agree with you that if it was Suzuki and Hagen, Suzuki and Misa, it wouldn't bother me any. that'd be pretty powerful. I'm certainly not going to disagree with that.
I think Michael Hughes is going to be pretty good, but I don't see him as the number 1 center.
Let me run a counterpoint on that, though, in terms of, like, you're saying that it takes that elite to win a cup. Well, it's a combination, too, of those. Like, you would love it to be Misa and Higgins to join Suzuki, and that would make a partnership that you think would be cup worthy. But at the same time, you've got cup champions that are Point and Cirelli, Eichel and Stevenson, O'Reilly and Shen. Those are 3 of the last 5 that just pop off the top of my head. Bennett and Barkov. The number 2. But the number 2 in all of those is not Misa and Suzuki. You understand? Like, the number 2 in all of those examples is a 55-point player.
Yeah.
And the number 1 was a true number 1. Mm-hmm. So I think that it's back to Tony's argument, it's a team that wins it. It's like, I was under the impression, and I got corrected on this, I thought that for the longest time, the top 2 centers was always Crosby, Malkin. You know what I mean? Forsberg, Sakic.
Yeah.
That it had to be the combination of greatness followed by more greatness. Like that domination.
Yzerman and Fedorov.
Right. That domination down the middle that nobody could touch.
Yeah.
Right. Domination down the middle. But if you look at the last 5 years, that second line guy is a real support guy. Like Stevenson by himself, you would go, that guy's no damn good. but put in the role to handle the other team's top guys, to neutralize them. Because at the end of the day, winning hockey is not about whether the first guy got 110 points. It's about whether he outscored him in that game or neutralized best players in that game. You win, each line wins. Like the fourth line of the Montreal Canadiens right now, when they face the other team's fourth line, they're playing winning hockey for the rest of the team. They lead the league with 25 goals. The second place team is Carolina with 18. And that's what Suzuki does. Suzuki just finished a road trip where he allowed 1 5-on-5 goal.
It's amazing. Snake,
That's winning hockey.
I got 2 numbers for you guys, okay? 62 and 57. Do those numbers say anything to you guys? 62 and 57.
They're my 649 numbers, and that's why I never.
I don't know. Point production for whom?
Okay, correct. 62 and 57
is O'Reilly and Shen.
Was point production for 2 centermen that were on a team that won the Stanley Cup.
Yeah, that St. Louis Blues team. Can you guys stop talking about this? I've been
okay.
The night they won the cup.
Okay,
the night they won the cup. I knew I would be hearing about the St. Louis.
So perfect.
2035.
Okay, so perfect. So you ready for this,
Me
Snake?
too. Me
you
too.
ready for
Me
this,
too.
Snake? You ready for this?
Me too.
I'm not talking about St. Louis. I'm not.
It was Eichel and Stevenson.
No, it was Krejci and Bergeron. But you want to know why that team won the cup? Krejci had 62, Bergeron 57.
Tim Thomas, 945 save percentage.
You know who was the leading point getter on that team? You know who was the leading point getter on that team that season? Milan Lucic.
Oh, yeah.
Milan Lucic was the leading point getter on that team that season. You want to know why the Boston Bruins won the cup? I'm going to tell you right now why the Boston Bruins won the cup. They won the cup because at center, they had Krejci and Bergeron, okay, as their top 2 line centermen, right? On the wing, they had Milan Lucic, and they had Nathan Horton, and they had Mark Recchi, and they had Michael Ryder, and on defense, they had Zdeno Chara, and they had Dennis Seidenberg, and in goal, they had Tim Thomas, and they had Coley Campbell with the National Hockey League, who had a son who played on the Bruins, and they got everything their way, right? And you know what? And they were and all that stuff, right? But you see, this is what I'm getting at is that, and they had Brad Martin. So their wingers were Lucic, Horton, Recchi, Marchand, Ryder. Those were 5 of their wingers.
Yeah.
Their centermen were Krejci and Bergeron. Their defensemen, once again, were Chara and Seidenberg. And I think Tyler Seguin was the other winger, by the way, centerman who was playing wing. And they had Tim Thomas in goal. And they had Claude Julien who coached them. And then again, they also came within 1 goal of getting eliminated in round 1 by the Canadiens, but ended up winning the Stanley Cup. So,
okay, Tony, they won 1 cup, okay? They did not become a dynasty.
Hey, they went to 3 finals, Snake.
I don't care. I want to see an exciting dynasty. I want to see the Edmonton Oilers of the 80s.
I just told you they went to 3 finals, and you told
me
they
don't care. They're boring. They were a boring team.
It doesn't matter if they were boring. The Devils were boring. They won 3 Stanley Cups.
Yeah.
Snake, dynasties don't exist anymore. To go
I want to see one.
Hey, to go to 3 finals in a cap era, that's as close to a dynasty as you can get, my friend.
Chicago Blackhawks.
And with a little bit of luck, they won 2 cups, maybe 3. They lost to St. Louis in Game 7.
Tony, when I look at roster construction, I always think dynasty, or at least Stanley Cup contender, a real, genuine Stanley Cup contender for 7, 8, 9 years. Not these one-shot deals like the St. Louis Blues in 2019 or the Boston Bruins, who are an actually very boring team, by the way. And I'm not saying this because they're the Boston Bruins. I don't care. It could be Columbus. I would say the same thing. So that's my point. So I have very high standards. And I have the impression that younger fans who have not seen much, in the last 30 years, they've not been treated too much at the Bell Center. I think their standards, unfortunately, are very low. And me, I want to go to the Bell Center and I want to see a dominant powerhouse. Do you get it? So every time I make a comment about Suzuki or whatever, he's not good enough, blah, 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 it's because I always think building a powerhouse.
A powerhouse was the Tampa Bay Lightning. That's the closest thing that you're going to get to a dynasty in 2025 or whatever. That was it. And
I think it is possible to build one. It is possible.
You think it's possible to build one?
Yeah,
So dynasty was the Canadians that won 4 cups in a row, and a dynasty was the Islanders that won 4 cups in a row.
well,
and a dynasty
even
was
the Chicago Blackhawks 3 and 6 years in the modern era was a dynasty. 3 and 6 years.
yeah. And when was the last time they won one?
And I think it's possible to build it. And look what Kent Hughes said yesterday at the press conference. He said, when he was asked, "Are you going to make trades, to improve the team?" And he said, "Well, my plan is to have a team that is going to be contending for many, many, many years."
Yeah.
And that's what it means. And not just a patch-up job to make the playoffs one year, miss the playoff the next year, reach the Final Four one year because your goalie stops everything. I don't think that's his plan. I think his plan is to have, I'm calling it the dynasty. Let's just say an extremely, extremely strong team that year after year, when you buy your whatever Hockey News yearbook, you see favorites for the Stanley Cup. This team, Montreal Canadiens, another team, let's say. That's what you want. Every year you want to start with the impression that they have a chance to win the cup, just like the Lightning for many, many years.
All right. So look, I'll give you the Chicago winning 3 cups in 6 years. Yeah, I think that's a dynasty, but their last one came in 2015. It's going to be 10 years now. Look, I don't know how are the Canadians going to look. They want to build a competitive team, and I think they're going to have a competitive team for a long time. But to build a dynasty, you're also going to need help. You're going to have to be able to sign unrestricted free agents, and I don't know if they're going to be able to do that in this market. We'll see. Are the Canadians going to make the playoffs this year? You can get on the action, go all the way with Betway, and get a free bet up to $200 if your first bet loses. Scan the QR code on the screen or click on the link in the details section to create an account. Redeem your welcome offer. Offers only available for new customers. Terms and conditions apply. Offers not available in Ontario. Must be 18 years of age, and please play responsibly. Okay, guys, the Canadians announced that Patrick Laine, who's been out with the flu, is not going to be making the trip to Washington. David Savard, they both skated today, Laine and Savard. Savard is not making the trip to Washington either. Who knows? Maybe one of them or both of them will be able to play on Saturday in the second game in as many nights versus the Dallas Stars. I'll end with this, and I recapped the midseason report with Kent Hughes yesterday with Craig Button of TSN, but I haven't had a chance to do it with you guys yet. Snake, is there one thing from yesterday's presser with Kent Hughes that most caught your attention? And Brian, I'll ask you that same question. Snake, you first.
Not really, because I think there are things that he's already said before. Obviously, saying that Demidov was not going to be coming this year, it's a bit of news, but I mean, no one expected Demidov. But again, he reiterated that he's building for the long term. He said it before, but to me, that's what I get from his point, and that's why I trust Kent Hughes.
Brian?
The statement that I thought was the most valid and important for the entire press conference was you have to have a stable of veterans or there will be regression. I thought that statement said it all, because what it indicated was, one, obviously, that he believes in experience. The trade Barron for Carrier bared that out as well. But it also kind of indicated, when he was speaking about March 7th, the trading deadline, that he won't just make trades for draft picks. That he won't be hunting thirds and fourth. He listed how many he had for a reason. He listed, I got 2 firsts, I got 2 seconds, I got 2 thirds. He made that whole list for a reason, because he's only got 50 contracts, which he said in the rebuild show, and he can't use any more. He's oversaturated in draft picks. I don't see them being sellers based on, if you read between the lines of that news conference.
Yeah, you're right. He tried to outline to everyone how many draft picks he has. He's got a ton.
I got too many. I don't need more. If we're in the mix at all, Yoel Armia stays. Yeah.
And when he was,
even if I can't sign him, Jake Evans stays, even if I can't sign him. I think they're all staying, unless they completely collapse.
Yeah, when he was questioned by Simon Olivier of La Presse newspaper as well, by the way, said, Kent, talk to us about you trade Jake Allen to give an opportunity to Caden Primo, but Caden Primo doesn't take the next step. Then you end up sending him down, and you trade Lehkonen for Barron, who doesn't take the next step, and then you end up trading Justin Barron. Do you think he was trying to get Kent Hughes to say, I either made a bad move, or he was trying to get Kent Hughes to say, the players, they dropped the ball, which in the end he just said, and one of the things he said about Kovacevic, he goes, well, you realize I have 10 defensemen. I can't keep them all here, right? And if I can't keep them all here, I'm going to end up losing them on waivers for nothing. So I might as well just trade whoever I can't keep here, right? Like, it's logical what he said. It's logical. But you're right. When he said all the draft picks he has, I'm like, he's going to play with some of them. He's going to play. He's going to play cards with some of them. That's it.
Yeah, it wouldn't even surprise me if he brings somebody in to solidify things if they're in a playoff spot on March 7th. People also forget that the owner influences things too. And if you've ever listened to Jeff Molson, he went on his little tour at the end of last season, and he wants them to move forward already. He's not patient as long as Simon is here. He does not want another top 5 pick. And when you hear a GM list all those draft picks, he's telling you I'm oversaturated in draft picks. Unless I can get a first for these guys, I don't need another low probability player. Like in the second round, you all know, I know the numbers here. The chance of making the NHL as a second round pick in the first half of the round is 10. The second half of the round is 5. The chance that you're a star in that round is 1%. It's Lane Hutson, right? There's one guy every 3 years that's a star from that position.
Well, so that's why you need more darts.
Yeah. So he knows exactly. Right. You are throwing darts, but at the end of the day, and he says it too all the time, I only have 50 contracts. I can't make 18 draft picks with 50 contracts. At the end of the day, I got to pick and choose who's developing well enough.
Yeah.
And it's more than throwing darts. It's an oversaturation process.
The 50 contract thing, I think, is a little bit overrated because when you look at rosters across the NHL, and let's take the Habs, for instance, look at the roster right now in Laval. There are guys on two-way contracts, basically NHL contracts. We're not
Simon, he's been at 49. But he's been at 48 and 49, and they've been like, do I take this guy or not take this guy? And I admit that at the moment it was Pitlick. It wasn't that hard pick because I don't think anybody thought Pitlick was going to be, a big-time NHLer. And not Ram either, the other one, Red. So, yes, it's a little overrated. But at the same time, if you're Ken Hughes and you're sitting at 49, at the end of the day, like, when you got 2 in the second and 2 in the third and 2 in the fourth, you do have
you have 2 to 4 years to sign these guys. First of all, other contracts.
No, because that's not. No, that's not the case.
But other contracts.
That's a continuing process. No. That's a continuing process. That's not. It just stops 1 year.
But I mean, look at the roster in Laval right now. Okay, and after we finish the podcast, and tell me that some of these guys. Tell me that all of these guys really deserve a 2-way contract. I don't think so.
Yeah, but what I'm suggesting is, like, if you're suggesting just this year, it's a continual process. Yeah, it's every year you got 50, and if you keep adding, 17 picks each year, the process gets worse as a GM. You've got more and more and more picks and bodies and choices when you keep having 17 picks. Or 15.
No,
right? It's continual.
It's simple math. It's simple math. True.
It's a snowball effect.
Yes, gentlemen.
And I think that's what he's telling everybody yesterday.
Yeah, a lot of fun, guys. There was a lot there tonight for everyone to handle. I think everyone's ready for bed now. Wow, they're probably not going to be able to sleep because the adrenaline's going. We probably won't be able to sleep either. So anyway, guys, this was a lot of fun. Canadiens in Washington tomorrow. Brian, win or loss?
I think they're going to lose tomorrow and then win on Saturday.
Okay. Snake?
Washington's very good. They're very, very good.
Snake?
Well, you know how I feel. Wishful thinking, a loss. Why don't they recall Caden Primo and give him the net for the rest of the year?
Heartless. He's ending heartless.
Look, if they don't get a top 5 pick, I want Caleb Desnoyers at least.
Oh, you're on the Caleb Desnoyers bandwagon.
I'm on the Caleb Desnoyers bandwagon. Very, very strong.
You know what I did?
Where do you think he'll go? Like 9, 10, 11, 12?
Look, if he plays the way he does right now and Moncton reaches the Memorial Cup, he's going to have a lot of exposure. And if he plays well, I think he could be maybe 6, 7.
Oh, wow, that high. Hey, listen, we'll have to talk another time because I think Tony wants to go to bed.
No. Tony doesn't want to go to bed. But you know what I didn't bring up is, and I can if I want to, but then I'm really like I'm opening up a can of worms here. But okay, I'll do it anyway. And what if Jakub Dobeš this weekend stands on his head and wins a big game and probably even again by shutout, and Samuel Montembeault does not?
Oh no, let's not go there. It's too early. Too early. We're gonna have another halak price. Let him play 10 at least. Let him play 10 at least.
He's good though.
No controversy.
I like him. I like him a lot. It's a very small sample size. Absolutely. But every time I've seen Jakub Dobeš, whether with the Canadiens or whether with Laval, I really like him. But
Fowler Dobeš, big time duo in about 3 years, maybe.
You think so? Fowler Dobeš, yeah.
Fowler Dobeš. That would be a killer duo.
So you think that Dobeš will be here for the next 2, 3, 4 seasons, and Samuel Montembeault signed a 3-year deal at $3.15 per year. You think when his 3-year deal is up, he will not be here anymore?
Well, I think Fowler's going to be the number one guy in about 3 years. Then the question is, do you keep Montembeault because he's going to be an older veteran, or do you keep Dobeš? But Dobeš is in 3 years is going to be what, 26? So I would see a duo like this. You don't need necessarily to have a backup goalie who's like 36 years old.
Yeah, and is Fowler the best goalie not in the NHL today? Or is it Kosa? Or is it Augustine? What do you think? You got 11 seconds to answer.
Well, the Askarov has been recalled by the Sharks. So
I'm not including him.
That makes Fowler the best. By the way, I'm going to be in Burlington in February. Boston College is playing 2 games, and
good
against Vermont.
I in person, and that should be fun.
Oh, that's going to be good. They got a heck of a team. They had 6 players on that team that were on the USA World Junior roster. By the way, I said this before, but the goalie for Czechia, who's a draft pick of Arizona, he's really good, eh?
Yeah, he's giant.
He's really good.
7.
Yeah. I like. He's hard to beat.
Yeah, Michael Rabal.
Yeah, he is really something. Yeah. Anyway, I can't wait to see Fowler too. Good goalie, not a gadget goalie, by the way. Good goalie, not a gadget goalie. Good goalie, great goalie.
Keep the scissors down, Tony.
I'm throwing the scissors in the garbage. Ciao, guys. Have a great night. All right.
Cheers.
All right. That was fun. That was a lot of fun. Marinaro, special thanks once again to all of our sponsors. Energy Transportation Group is one. Playground is another. Tibi is another, as well as Fruiterie Dillard and the Betway. Special thanks to all of you as well for watching. Whether it was on YouTube Live, Facebook Live, or Twitter Live, numbers were really, really good. If you liked it tonight, leave us a 5-star review on Apple. It's our way of feeling the love. The Sick Podcast will be back tomorrow night, same time, same place, right after the Canadiens and the Washington Capitals. So it'll be on for about 10 p.m. Eastern, in which we usually are on, unless, of course, the Canadiens have a late night start, which they do not tomorrow. Tomorrow night, same time, same place. Ciao for now.
And that's a wrap. Hope you don't miss us too much until next time. Follow the Sick Podcast with Tony Marinaro on YouTube, Instagram, Facebook, Google Play, and Apple Podcasts. The Sick Podcast is brought to you by Energy Transportation Group, driven to be different. LaVie.tv, embrace your true nature. And Playground, your premier gaming destination.